He was yelling before I even opened the door. And when I finally did, the man standing on my porch had a gun on his hip and a clipboard in his hand, ready to ruin somebody's day. Where are you watching from, by the way? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you enjoy smart takedowns and real justice, hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss what happens next. My name is Thomas Granger. I'm a retired aerospace engineer, ex-NASA, and I've lived in the gated suburb of Westbrook Commons for over 15 years. It's one of those neighborhoods with stone fountains at every corner and a homeowners association that polices everything from the shade of your mailbox to the size of your Halloween pumpkins. I've played by the rules, even the ridiculous ones, paid my dues, kept the grass trimmed to exactly 2 inches. Hell, I even re-landscaped my flower beds to meet their drought resistance cohesion guidelines. That's real, by the way. It's on page 47 of the HOA handbook, but nothing I'd ever done would prepare me for the moment the HOA's self-appointed chief of security came pounding on my door and pointed a weapon at my daughter. But let me back up 24 hours. My daughter, Callie, had just pulled in from Coronado. She'd driven 3 straight hours after a grueling 72-hour training cycle, one of those no-sleep, zero-comfort psychological gauntlets she runs for active-duty Navy SEALs. Callie's one of the top tactical instructors in the country. Tough doesn't begin to describe her. Calm, lethal, brilliant. That's closer. She'd promised to help us install some new security features at the house. After a string of break-ins, in the next subdivision, she came with a load of high-tech gear, reinforced locks, motion floodlights, even a biometric lock for the back entrance. Stuff that would take a professional burglar one look to walk away from. She parked her matte black Jeep, military surplus, fully modified, in the designated visitor spot just outside our unit. Technically, the HOA allows 30 minutes in those spots. But with arms full of equipment and her body running on fumes, she needed time. We were halfway through unloading when her phone buzzed. She checked the ID, muttered, "It's one of my trainees," and stepped inside. I watched her sit down, back straight despite the exhaustion, and immediately shift into crisis response mode. The young SEAL on the line was deep in a PTSD spiral, one triggered by the anniversary of a botched op overseas. I watched my daughter close her eyes, slow her breathing, and guide that man back from the edge. She wasn't just helping him cope, she was keeping him alive. Call lasted 25 minutes. In that time, I made coffee, locked the side gate, and, foolishly, forgot about the HOA clock ticking on her vehicle. When the doorbell rang, it wasn't a gentle chime. It was a sustained, angry pounding. I opened it. Nero Wilder. If the name sounds dramatic, wait till you meet the man. 58, graying goatee, mirrored aviators, and a chest puffed like a peacock in spring. He wore a black tactical vest, non-issued, and carried himself like he thought this neighborhood was Fallujah. Technically, Nero's title was Neighborhood Safety Officer, but we all knew the truth. He was a mall cop who'd been handed a clipboard and a vague mandate to enforce community regulations. "You've got a violation," he barked. "That military vehicle's been parked in a visitor slot for 43 minutes. Tow truck's already en route." I blinked. "My daughter just arrived, Nero. She's helping us with a home safety install. She was on an emergency call. She'll move it shortly." He didn't blink. "The limit is 30 minutes. Section 4.3b of the HOA Compliance Regulations. You'll be fined $500 for the violation plus $300 for the tow." He flipped a paper forward on his clipboard and scribbled aggressively like he was authorizing a military airstrike. Behind him, I noticed the tow truck was already idling at the end of the cul-de-sac. I was about to respond when Callie stepped up behind me, towel slung over her shoulder, her face pale from exhaustion, but her posture upright. "Sir," she said, her tone neutral, "I'm aware of the policy. I arrived an hour ago after a non-stop training cycle. I had to take a crisis call regarding, One of my trainees, an active duty SEAL in a trauma spiral. I'll move the Jeep in 15 minutes. I'm just trying to eat something and rest my spine. Wilder's lips curled. Military? Prove it. Callie tilted her head. I don't need to. I've had trouble with types like you before, he sneered. People who think a badge or a rank means the rules don't apply. She didn't. React. I'm not asking for special treatment, she said. I'm asking for 15 minutes of common decency. That's when he pulled out his phone and shoved it toward her face, camera on, recording. I'm documenting your refusal. To comply, he said smugly. Any escalation will be forwarded to the board. Callie took a breath. I saw the micro-movements in her shoulders, the posture shift, the mental countdown, and then Wilder made the mistake that would unravel everything. He reached out and grabbed her wrist. You don't walk away when I'm talking to you, he snarled. The world froze for a second. Then, snap. In a single motion, Callie twisted her arm, dropped her weight, and disarmed him of the phone. Not violently, just surgically. She pushed him backward with a firm hand on his chest and stepped back. He stumbled into the flower bed. You just assaulted an officer, he bellowed, scrambling to his feet, pulling leaves from his tactical vest. I'm coming back with the real police. Callie stood still. I look forward to speaking with them, she said calmly. He stormed off, screaming something about combat threats and community safety violations, and I turned to my daughter. She was pale, shaking slightly, not from fear but restraint. That was muscle memory, she muttered. I didn't want to touch him, but he grabbed my wrist. I nodded, but neither of us had any idea just how far Wilder was willing to go, because 20 minutes later, he came back, and this time, he didn't come alone. He brought 2 HOA board members and a loaded firearm. When Wilder came back, he wasn't alone. This time, he brought his 2 closest HOA allies, Carl, the rule-obsessed accountant who'd once fined a neighbor for wind chimes, and Lenora Fields, who ran the landscaping committee like it was a paramilitary operation, and on Wilder's hip, a Glock, fully holstered but clearly visible. He didn't announce himself politely. He marched straight up the porch steps like he had a warrant. Step outside, he barked. Callie was already at the door. She'd been watching the cameras, yes, we had cameras, and had positioned herself calmly in full view of everyone, right by the doorframe. You're not entering this home, she said, her voice steady. If you have something to say it from the lawn. Wilder's nostrils flared. You assaulted an officer of the HOA. That's a criminal offense. You're facing immediate community sanctions. Callie folded her arms. You're not an officer, and this isn't a courtroom. Lenora stepped forward nervously. Miss Granger, we're not here to fight. We just want to resolve this peacefully before it escalates further. Callie raised an eyebrow. He already escalated. He put his hands on me, and now he's wearing a firearm. Do you understand how this looks from a legal standpoint? Carl cleared his throat. The firearm is legally owned, but not legally displayed during HOA enforcement, she shot back, which, by the way, has no legal authority to involve weapons. Behind her calm voice, I saw something else brewing. Not anger, a shift. Callie wasn't planning to fight Wilder. She was planning to expose him. Wilder's face twitched. He turned to Lenora and Carl. I warned you she was dangerous. No, Callie said, stepping forward slowly. You warned them I was dangerous because you're used to people backing down. I don't. Lenora hesitated. Maybe we should go. Let's talk to Nancy before this. No one's going anywhere. Wilder snapped. She's going to pay the fine. She's going to be written up. And if she refuses... His hand dropped to the grip of his pistol. I have the authority to detain. That's when I stepped outside. Put your hand back on your clipboard. Wilder. Or I swear to God... Dad, Callie said quietly. I've got this. She took a step toward him. Let me be clear, she said. I'm trained in tactical restraint, active conflict de-escalation, and disarmament. I'm not afraid of you, but I will not allow you to threaten this household." Wilder didn't back down. He sneered, hand still resting on the holster. That's when the door opened again behind us, and Callie's voice changed. "Revna, stay inside." My wife froze, holding a tray of water she'd meant to offer to the guests. Her eyes went straight to Wilder's sidearm. He noticed her looking, and that small, smug smirk returned. "You threatening my wife now?" I asked. "I'm protecting the community," he replied coldly, "from unstable individuals." Callie took a slow breath, and then, without raising her voice, she said, "You're done." Wilder blinked. "Excuse me?" She turned to Carl. "Carl, do you know how many residents Wilder has filed citations against in the last 12 months? Carl blinked. I don't... 53. I looked up the logs on the HOA site before I came here. She turned to Lenora. "And do you know how many of those fines were overturned on appeal?" I didn't handle appeals." 0, Callie said. 0 appeals allowed, because you all changed the bylaws 2 years ago to remove the resident. Appeal clause. Wilder stiffened. "That's not your business." "No," she said. "It's everyone's business. You've turned this place into a micro-dictatorship." I saw Carl take a step back. Callie continued, calm as ever. "So here's what happens next. I'm filing a formal complaint with the state HOA regulation board. I'm submitting body cam footage, yes, I wore one, of you threatening me with a firearm. I've already consulted a civil rights attorney about filing an injunction for harassment, and I'm putting your behavior on full display for the entire community to see." She pulled a small USB drive from her pocket and tossed it toward Wilder. "You're on record." He didn't pick it up, just stared at her like she'd spoken another language. "You don't scare me," he muttered. "You don't have to be scared," Callie replied. "You just have to be exposed." Wilder looked to Lenora. "She's making this political." "No," Callie said, looking her dead in the eyes. "I'm making it public." And that's when the cracks began to show. Carl started stepping. "Way," Lenora glanced between us, clearly unsure. "We'll talk to Nancy," she said. We weren't aware it had gone this far." Wilder turned red. "You're both cowards." But no one was listening anymore. That evening, Callie sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, downloading footage from our security cameras. In one clip, you could clearly see Wilder's hand on his gun. In another, you could hear his exact words. "I have the authority to detain. You don't walk away when I'm talking to you. I'm protecting the community from people like you." She didn't need to add commentary. The footage spoke volumes. We submitted the file to the state HOA board. We sent a copy to the local news. And, quietly, to every resident in the community with a subject line that simply read, "Is this how safety should look?" The responses began trickling in. Some were cautious. "Thank you for saying something. I thought I was the only one he harassed." Others were more direct. "He once followed my teenage daughter home from school. We never reported it because he threatened us with fines." One message simply said, "It's time someone stood up." The next morning, a printed flyer was taped to every community mailbox. Emergency. HOA meeting. This Friday topic. Review of security policies and oversight. Wilder didn't issue it. Nancy did. They were scrambling. Callie looked at the flyer, then at me. "They're afraid," she said. I nodded. "Of what?" She didn't smile. "Of what happens when people stop following fake authority." Friday came like a storm. Not weather-wise, the skies were clear, but in the undercurrent of nervous energy that pulsed through Westbrook Commons. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. sharp in the community clubhouse. That same sterile building where, for years, residents had been too afraid to speak unless given permission, where Nancy Weber pounded her little gavel like it came with divine authority, where Wilder stood by the entrance like a mall cop turned dictator. But tonight, Something was different. Tonight, my daughter walked in first. Callie arrived 15 minutes early, dressed cleanly in gray slacks and a navy blazer, her shoulders back, chin level, and calm expression fixed, not confrontational, but undeniable. I watched the room react to her. Some people stiffened, others whispered, but no one laughed. Nancy sat at the head table, gavel resting by her notes, face carefully composed. Wilder flanked her, arms crossed, fake badge shining under the ceiling lights. The Glock was conspicuously absent. A few board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Carl looked like he hadn't slept in days. We took seats in the front row. Residents filled the room quickly. Older couples, families, people who usually stayed quiet at these meetings. The same people Wilder had ticketed, scolded, or stared down. They were all here. Nancy stood at exactly 7 p.m. This meeting is being held to address recent community tensions, misinformation, and violations of HOA policy, she began. Let me be clear, our goal is unity. Callie didn't blink. Nancy continued, tone clipped. We will now review accusations made against Mr. Wilder. Most are exaggerated, but I'd like to respond, Callie said, standing calmly. Nancy scowled. This is not open mic night. You're not a resident. I'm listed as an occupant on my parents' deed, Callie said smoothly. Per HOA bylaws section 9, occupants of record are entitled to address the board when directly accused or named in enforcement actions. Nancy's jaw tightened. Several residents nodded. They knew the rule. She couldn't suppress it without looking corrupt. Reluctantly, she waved a hand. Fine, you have 3 minutes. Callie stepped forward, plugged in a USB. The screen behind the board came to life. Grainy black and white security footage appeared. Wilder standing on our porch, one hand on his weapon. I have the authority to detain. People like you think the rules don't apply. You're under HOA arrest. The room fell deathly quiet. Then she played the audio of the second incident, the moment Wilder grabbed her arm. You don't walk away when I'm talking to you. Another clip showed him returning later that day, red-faced, flanked by Carl and Lenora. The weapon was visible. His voice shook as he threatened arrest. When the footage ended, Callie turned back to the room. This man isn't a law officer. He's not trained in de-escalation, firearms safety, or mental health response, yet he's routinely used fear to control this community. Nancy slammed the gavel. This isn't a court. You're grandstanding. I'm presenting facts, Callie said. And here's another one. She clicked to the next slide. A spreadsheet. Violations issued by Wilder. Names, dates, amounts. Over 50 citations. 92% of them targeting residents of color, single parents, or families who had questioned board decisions. Gasps rippled across the room. Carl looked down. Lenora whispered something to the board member beside her. Callie's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I don't live here full-time, but my parents do. And so do all of you. You deserve leadership that protects, not polices you. The man standing at your gate with a badge and a clipboard is using both to push people out. You've seen it. You've lived it. Nancy stood up, flustered. None of this is verified. We've already addressed these issues privately. Really? Callie asked. Because the HOA records I pulled were public. Your enforcement data is public. The footage is time-stamped, verified. Then she said it. And every single file is now in the hands of the state HOA Oversight Committee. Silence. Even Wilder's arms dropped. Nancy opened her mouth, then closed it. The smugness was gone. The composure? Cracking. A hand went up in the back. It was Mr. Henderson, the 75-year-old widower Wilder once fined for irregular head shapes. I'd like to speak, he said. Nancy tried to interject. This time, residents around the room said it first. Let him talk. He's got the floor. We're done being silenced. And the stories began. Mrs. Patel stood, voice shaking. My daughter was followed home because her friend parked in our driveway. He ticketed us and then stood outside our home for an hour. The Gonzaleses. We were fined for a swing set. Said it was a noise hazard. But the neighbor's trampoline? Approved. Zara Thompson. He told me my son's autism service dog was unauthorized. Said we were abusing exceptions. Each story was like a chisel tapping away at Wilder's armor, his face flushed, his fists clenched. Then Mr. Patel stood. Big man. Calm voice. He said my accent made other residents uncomfortable, that I should try to blend in more. He's lucky I didn't report it. Now the crowd was buzzing. People who had never spoken at HOA meetings were standing, lining up to speak. Their anger wasn't just about Callie anymore, it was about years. And Wilder? He broke. You don't understand what it takes to keep this place safe, he bellowed. You mean like pulling a gun on my daughter? I said, from the front row. He turned red, opened his mouth, and Callie stepped forward. Her final words were surgical. No one here feared crime, Mr. Wilder. They feared you. And the room, packed with people, applauded. Not wildly, not for show. Just slow, honest clapping from neighbors who'd finally seen what had been controlling them. Lose control. Nancy tried one last time to spin it. We're postponing the vote until we vote now, someone shouted. Yeah, tonight. A board member raised his hand. Motion to suspend Wilder from all duties pending full investigation. Seconded, Nancy. Pounded the gavel so hard it cracked, but it was too late. The vote passed. Wilder was removed. Publicly, irrevocably, and in that moment. The balance of power in Westbrook Commons finally shifted. 3 days after the vote, a notice was taped to every front door in Westbrook Commons. Effective immediately, Nero Wilder has been removed from his position as neighborhood safety officer. Pending investigation, HOA operations are under temporary oversight by a transitional committee. It didn't feel real at first. After years of intimidation, silence, and fear, the words on that paper seemed too easy. But the effects? Instant. Wilder's black SUV didn't prowl the streets anymore. The 6 a.m. foot patrols stopped. No more random violation slips taped to doors like threats. Residents who hadn't spoken to each other in years started, stopping mid-walk, talking, smiling, sharing old HOA horror stories like survivors swapping battle scars. As for Callie, she didn't bask in it. She didn't gloat. She stayed exactly the same. Quiet, calm, disciplined, but you could tell something had lifted. Her back was straighter, her voice lighter. She'd come to help install a security system. Instead, she helped dismantle an empire. The real unraveling came faster than any of us expected. Turns out, Callie's submission to the state HOA Oversight Committee had triggered an automatic compliance audit, something that hadn't been done in our neighborhood in over a decade. And it didn't stop at Wilder. Within 2 weeks, investigators found that Nancy Weber had been rerouting HOA funds into consulting contracts to a company registered under her sister-in-law's name. Over $180,000 diverted over 5 years, inflated maintenance costs, fabricated security expenses, and worst of all, kickbacks to the local patrol division disguised as safety grants. When the story hit the local paper, the headline read, Homeowners' fees used to fund fake. Security, personal gain. Whistleblower footage. Leads to full state audit. That whistleblower, a 36-year-old Navy SEAL trainer with a thumb drive and a reason to protect her parents. Nancy tried to deny everything until someone on the transitional board leaked copies of her emails. By the 3rd week, she'd lawyered up. By the 5th, she was gone, resigned, disgraced, publicly named in an embezzlement case that would end with state prosecution. We thought that was the end of it. But Callie wasn't done. One evening, while we sat outside under the back porch light, watching the breeze play across the lawn, she turned to me. This place won't heal if we just fire them and forget. I nodded slowly. So what do you suggest? She handed me a stack of printed pages. A complete reform plan. She'd drafted a full revision of the HOA bylaws, term limits, open budget reviews, third-party audits, even anonymous resident complaint channels. Everything we'd needed, but never dared ask for. And this time, people listened. Because she wasn't just some outsider shouting into the void. She was the woman who stood between a gun and her family, and didn't flinch. At the next meeting, when the interim board asked if anyone had new business to present, Callie stood at the front with a USB drive in one hand and a folder in the other. Her voice was measured, clear. "We don't just need new leaders," she said. "We need new rules, rules that prevent power from being abused again. This isn't about revenge. It's about rebuilding." She walked the room through every line of the proposed reforms. Financial transparency. Public vote on security policies. Mandatory removal of board members who abuse authority. By the end of her presentation, no one had questions, just a standing ovation. The reforms passed unanimously. And just like that, Westbrook Commons became something we never expected. A place. People trusted again. The emotional shift came slowly. Little things at first. The Patels installed wind chimes again. The Johnsons, whose wheelchair ramp had once been flagged, repainted their porch without asking permission. Even Mr. Henderson, cane in hand, walked his dog without checking over his shoulder. But the biggest change? The new HOA board. Residents, elected from within. People who'd lived here, struggled here, fought here. One of them was Mrs. Gonzalez. Another was Lenora Fields. And yes, even Carl. He apologized publicly, told the room he'd been too afraid of being the next target. That silence had made him complicit. Callie accepted it with grace. Not everyone would have. A month later, a plaque was quietly installed at the community clubhouse. It wasn't flashy, just brushed steel. It read, "To those who stood their ground," so others could feel safe again. Below it, a list of names. Callie's was last. When she saw it, she didn't say anything. She just smiled. The kind of smile you only give when you've earned peace. Her visit ended 2 weeks later. Before she left, she called Kara, the young woman she'd helped walk through trauma over the phone the day she arrived. They met for coffee. Callie didn't talk much about it, but I saw how her face softened when she mentioned the call. "She's doing better," she said. "Re-enrolled in school, training to work with veterans." I asked, "Because of you?" Callie shook her head. "Because someone didn't give up on her." And just like that, I understood. This whole thing, from the Jeep parking fine to the gun, the board collapse, and the reform, none of it was about Callie winning. It was about Callie refusing to back down from something broken, whether it was a trainee in crisis, a power-drunk HOA goon, or a corrupt neighborhood structure. She stood her ground, not to prove a point, but to protect what mattered. On her last night in town, we sat in the backyard under the stars, a fire pit crackling. Between us, my wife brought out coffee, the kind Callie liked. Jet black, no sugar. She took a sip, looked out at the garden, the lights, the quiet peace finally settling over our block. "You proud of me, Dad?" she asked softly. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked around. No, patrol car at the curb. No absurd notices on the porch, no tension in the air, just community. Calm. And my daughter, shoulders finally relaxed. "Proud doesn't cover it," I said. "You didn't just stop a bully. You rebuilt an entire neighborhood." She smiled faintly. "SEAL training never covered HOA warfare." "No manual for it," I replied. "But you wrote one." She chuckled. "Guess I did." We sat in silence. For a while, watching the fire flicker. Then I added, "You know, Wilder thought he was the authority. Nancy thought she was the queen. But in the end, You didn't need a badge. You didn't need a title. You had truth, and you made people believe in it again. Callie didn't respond right away. She just nodded, then stood, hugged her mother, hugged me, and walked to her Jeep, parked perfectly in our driveway, no ticket in sight. That was a year ago. Since then, Westbrook Commons has become a model of HOA reform across the state. Other communities have asked for copies of our bylaws. Some even invited Callie to speak at their own board transitions. She always says no, says she prefers action to applause. But for those of us who lived through it, we'll never forget the woman who stood up and made a crooked system fall down.